Hey nerds. Today I was going to do a short little video, kind of like I did with the anime one, where I was like, what anime got you into anime? And I got a lot of responses to that, so I thought, what's your favorite opening line to a novel? That was going to be my question. And of course, I figured in my video I was going to have to say what mine was. And of course, my favorite novel of all time is Dahlgren by Samuel R. Delany, because the opening line is the last half of a sentence: to wound the autumnal city. I remember the first time I read that, I thought it was strange, and it just kind of called out to me, because the very last sentence of the book is the beginning of that. So the whole thing just kind of wraps around itself. I'm not going to go into what this book is about. It's pretty dense. It's pretty thick. I've read it twice, and I'm still not sure I understand it. But it is an enjoyable read. Delany is a master of language. It's just amazing. But that's not the video I'm going to do today, because this got me thinking about the first book of Delany's that I read, which was Triton. This one here. A little bit shorter, less dense, a little easier to read. These are science fiction books, by the way, from the 70s. And the version of Triton that I read the first time was lent to me by a friend. He says, read this, I think you're going to like it. I said, okay. And I did. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But the thing about Triton and all the rest of Delany's work, and I've read a lot, is that it opened me up to worlds and cultures that I didn't know anything about. Samuel R. Delany is a black man. He lived in New York City. He was also gay. And his experiences as a gay black man come through in his novels. Now, I was born in 1971. So my formative years were the 70s and the 80s. I graduated high school in 1989. And I grew up in white suburban America. It was very homogenous. I can count on one hand the number of black kids that were in my school, and it would be less than 5 fingers. And of course, growing up in the 80s, I completely fell for the political rhetoric at the time about welfare queens and, thugs in the streets and gang members and all this. I fell for it all because I didn't know any better, because I wasn't exposed to anything else. Okay, now this, just bear with me here, please. But reading Delany's works was the first step on setting me on a path of learning more about the world and about people and how different we all can be. Because not only did it teach me some things, it allowed me to realize there were questions that I had, questions that before I read his books, I didn't know how to ask. I didn't know I even could ask them, because I didn't have the knowledge to ask those questions, because I just wasn't exposed to it. So I went on a journey, first reading through as many of Delany's books as I could, and there's quite a lot. And like I said, he is a great author and is an enjoyable read. Here's a couple more that I want to show you, because these here, this Navarion cycle, these books, these are presented as sword and sorcery books and a collection of short stories. One of them, I believe the third one, is actually a full novel, but the other 3 are just collections of short stories. And Delany used these sword and sorcery stories as a vehicle to really talk about his own experiences, to talk about things in the world from his perspective. There's one story that goes, it's basically about credit, how credit works and why it's actually bad. There was another story in there called Of Plagues and Carnivals, and it is 100% about gay people, struggling with the AIDS epidemic back in the 80s and early 90s. So these books taught me things, and they put me on a path to learning more. And it was enlightening, to be sure, because I realized that I knew what I knew prior to reading Delaney. I knew what I knew because I was taught racism and bigotry and whiteness. And it wasn't so much that somebody sat me down and said, blah, 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 but it was exposure to code, exposure to tacit behaviors that taught me those things. Finding these books taught me a different way. And because I was curious and I wanted to learn more, because what I was reading felt right, I explored it and learned more, and was able, over the course of a long time, to change the way that I thought, change the way that I viewed the world around me. Now, I am a middle-aged white man, so I, in a lot of people's eyes, I am the enemy, and I know why. I understand that. I do not have the words, the wit, to debate that to somebody who feels a certain way about me and the way I look. I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm not going to edit this video. I'm going to post it as is, and people can comment as they like. I'm sure that I'll get comments from people that haven't watched the whole thing, comments from people that have watched the whole thing, though people who watch the entirety of my videos beginning to end are few and far between. I don't know. I remember what my point was. My point was this. Art, literature, those things are important. They are important for exposing us to thoughts and concepts and emotions that we otherwise would not ever be exposed to. Thoughts and concepts and emotions that, if you're open to them, can help you start along a path of opening your mind to other things and other possibilities. It was after I read Delaney, I read more black authors, I read more women authors, Margaret Atwood, for example, authors from other nations. I can't remember his name, but the man who wrote 100 Years of Solitude, I read that decades ago and loved that book. So it opened me up to not only, reading other books by black people, by women, but also people from other countries who have different cultures. eye-opening, and I still look for books like that. I have a small stack of books I need to get through that are in the other room, and I honestly can't remember what they are. I can't go get them because Mrs. Elder is sleeping there in the bedroom. I don't want to disturb her. Right, art and literature is important, and when I read Delaney, it kind of solidified the decision that I had made coming out of high school. Now, I read Delaney in the very early 90s. It solidified my decision coming out of high school that I wanted to be, at the very least, an English teacher. At the very most, a successful novelist. Neither happened. But I have never stopped writing. None of my stories are as thought-provoking as those things that I read or continue to read. I didn't go to college. I couldn't afford it, being poverty-stricken my entire life. But I consume as much art as I can, and I think everyone else should. And it pains me that there is a faction in the country I live in that is actively making sure that art, literature, education is stomped out. Because art, education, literature, those are things that they don't like because they need people to be uneducated. They need people to be ignorant. They need people to believe their lies so that they can stay in power. And it's the people who are educated, the people who are exposed to other cultures and ideas, see right away the problems that are going on. It's just the same way as somebody who used to be in a cult can recognize a cult, or somebody who's in a cult. You can see it immediately. I was actually in 2 cults throughout my life. The Catholic Church and the U.S. military. So I recognize them when they happen, and they're happening now. The doing away with education and appreciation for the arts and teaching people is being stomped out. This is not a good thing for the United States of America right now. So I post D&D content the best I can. And even with that content, I get people who are uneducated and ignorant coming into my comments, berating the roleplay TTRPG community now for being too woke, and some of the comments are just really, really gross and disgusting. And I wonder if they would be open to reading somebody like Delaney, and what effect it would have. I'm not sure. Maybe there's something out there we can show them. Maybe there's something out there we can show them that will put them on a path towards open-mindedness. I'd like to think there is. Don't stop reading. Don't stop appreciating art. Don't stop appreciating music. Don't stop creating it on your own. Now more than ever, it is so important to keep those kinds of things around. That's all.